Hello, viewers. I hope all is well for everyone watching this broadcast today. Um, Welcome to Real Justice, where we break down issues we have with today's modern criminal legal system. What I'm going to talk about today is the importance of black and brown people, men and women, and young adults doing everything that we can do individually and collectively to make sure that we avoid falling into the traps and the pitfalls known as the criminal justice system or the criminal legal system. I say we need to avoid getting caught up, getting arrested, getting charged by the police, because once a black or brown person gets arrested and charged and they're facing criminal charges, whatever those charges may be, serious or non-serious, once we're facing those charges, you, me, or anyone else, we're not going to get a fair shake in the system today. We're just not. This system today, as it's constructed, is set up to exploit ignorance. Meaning, the criminal justice system is a legal process. There's a whole process that takes place from the moment you're arrested by the police and taken to a precinct, a county sheriff's office, or whatever the local jurisdiction may be. Once you're there, there's a process that takes place there. You're fingerprinted, you're photographed, they take your pedigree information, so forth and so on. And there's a process all the way through. Different proceedings take place. You have a preliminary hearing, you have an indictment, you get arraigned, you file pretrial motions. There are hearings on some of those motions. If there's not a plea bargain that can be made, if there's not a plea bargain that's agreed to by the defendant, then the matter will eventually proceed to trial. A jury will be picked, and the state will present evidence, or the feds, if it's a federal case, will present evidence. You have a lawyer. If you can afford one, you have a paid lawyer. If not, which is the case for most people, you have a public defender, a legal aid attorney. They go by different names in different jurisdictions across America. Here in New York, where I'm based at, excuse me, here in New York, it's Legal Aid Society. It's public defenders in New York City, the 5 boroughs that make up New York City. And the deck is basically stacked against you. You're not going to get a fair shake in the courts. I don't care where you are. You could be here in New York. You could be somewhere down south. You could be somewhere in the Midwest. You could be somewhere out west, north, south, east, and west. If you're black, or if you're of Hispanic descent, meaning you speak Spanish, black or brown is my simple way of, saying that, referring to black or brown people. If you're black or brown, you're not going to get a fair shake. Now, some people are sitting here saying, well, how can you make a statement like that? You don't have anything to back that up. Well, I can make a statement like that because I'm speaking from firsthand knowledge, first of all. Second of all, there's things that happen in, excuse me, there are things that take place and that are in the news every day. I can give you an example of how the system is stacked against black and brown people. We'll take the Jonathan Majors case. Excuse me. We'll take the Jonathan Majors case. The Jonathan Majors case involved a black defendant who was accused of assault, harassment. He got into some sort of altercation or an incident with his then girlfriend in the back of a car. First, let me just explain who Jonathan Majors is for some people who may not be aware. He's a black guy. I don't know what role, what character he played, but he's in the Marvel Comics series, and he's one of the characters in that series, ongoing series. His career was up and coming. His star was getting brighter, and the system took everything away from him, or is trying to take everything away from him, because the system is set up to hurt black and brown people and protect Caucasians or people of European descent. And if the situation happens to be a black man or an Hispanic man and a white woman, the black or brown individual is the perpetrator, and the white woman is the victim. We saw this 35 years ago with the Central Park Five. A white woman was jogging, minding her business, which she had every right to do, jogging in Central Park, and was set upon and viciously beaten and sexually assaulted. The city was in an uproar, and people were looking for justice. So the police went out and rounded up a bunch of people who they didn't have any evidence to believe that these people had done anything wrong. All they were doing was, it was a nice day out and they were outside having a nice time. And they happened to be in the park or in the vicinity of Central Park in Manhattan in New York City. And the police rounded a bunch of people up, some of them underage, brought them in, put pressure on them, wouldn't let their parents come and get them, speak to them, be with them, anything. And basically coerced a confession out of these 14, 15, 16-year-old boys, little boys. The system saw them as maniacs, a wolf pack. I remember some of the headlines in the newspaper. I'm old enough to remember some of the headlines in the newspaper back in 1989 when this took place. Called them a wolf pack, said they were wilding out, and coerced them into making false confessions. And after these guys were railroaded and locked away, years later, the real perpetrator ran into, I believe it was Corey Wise, ran into Corey Wise upstate, maybe Auburn Correctional Facility. The facility, those things don't really matter where they met at and all of that. But he ran into one of the exonerated five and basically confessed to the crime. Said he was by himself. He was alone. He's a lone wolf. The guy, I believe his name is Mateus Reyes, already had sex charges in his jacket, previous offenses for sex-related offenses. And his DNA matched the DNA that was found at the crime scene. None of the exonerated five's DNA was anywhere, but Mr. Reyes's DNA was present. Reyes was able to explain what happened. In the false confessions, some of the kids were making up details that didn't fit with what actually the evidence that was actually available. The system didn't care about those inconsistencies. The system saw red meat in the form of young, black, and brown people, and the system ate them up, chewed them up, ate them up, and spit them out. They didn't care about any of the inconsistencies in these false confessions that were being made. The system doesn't care about facts, y'all. This is why we got to make sure we do everything, whether it's you, if you're out here doing something you know you shouldn't be doing, or if you know someone who's doing something they shouldn't be doing, we need to do everything we can to make sure we don't get caught up in this system. Because if we get caught up in it, we're not going to get a fair one. Mr. Reyes's story as to what happened on that night in 1989 in Central Park matched with the physical evidence that was at the scene. His DNA matched the DNA found at the scene. So the 5 young men who were charged, tried, and convicted had their convictions overturned. They were exonerated and released. But after serving significant amount of jail and prison time, that was one example. I want to go back to Jonathan Majors. Jonathan Majors was riding in a cab or a car service in Manhattan with his then girlfriend. I don't know her name. Her name is not really important. You guys can look it up. And the lady looked over and saw Jonathan Majors on his phone texting someone. And she read something that she believed to said, "I wish I was in your arms right now." Jonathan Majors' ex-girlfriend became livid. She, in a fit of rage, she snatched the phone out of his hand and refused to give it back. Jonathan Majors tried to get his phone back. There's video footage showing them wrestling over the phone. There's video footage of them both outside of the car. There's video footage showing him putting her back in the car. And I believe there was video footage showing him running away from the scene and her chasing him, following, actually running. There's video footage showing all of that. And he got charged with criminal offenses, and the lady got nothing. I have a problem with that, and everyone should have a problem with that, because I can't understand why Jonathan Majors was charged with anything. Oh, some people say her finger was broken or fractured or something like that. But the system, once again, ignored the facts, saw a black man and a white woman, which, whether people believe it or not, that's taboo in the court systems. If a black man and a white woman, whatever the dynamic is, if they're Bonnie and Clyde crime buddies, when that spree ends, they're going to leave the black man holding the bag. Same thing for Hispanic. If you're dealing with a white woman and you guys are doing something you're not supposed to be doing, when the system catches up with you, you're going to be the one holding the bag. The white woman is going, they're going to find a way to minimize and let her off. In this case, they weren't committing Mr. Majors and the woman weren't committing a crime. But the trial testimony establishes that the woman, when she got on the stand and testified, she said she looked over at Jonathan Majors' phone, saw he was texting someone, and was able to read something from a woman that said, "I wish I was in your arms right now." She became enraged. The woman with Mr. Majors became enraged and snatched the phone out of his hands and refused to give it back. Well, let's take a look at Penal Law Section 160.00, which defines robbery in New York State, which is where this occurred at. Robbery is forcible stealing. A person forcibly steals property and commits robbery when, in the course of committing a larceny, he uses or threatens the immediate use of physical force upon another person for the purpose of 1. Preventing or overcoming resistance to the taking of the property or to the retention thereof immediately after the taking, or 2. Compelling the owner of such property or another person to deliver up the property or to engage in other conduct which aids in the commission of the larceny. Well, the woman got on a stand and said she saw another woman texting Jonathan Majors and saying something that caused her some distress. And she snatched Jonathan Majors' phone out of his hand. Well, if you look at the definition of robbery, robbery is forcible stealing for the purpose of preventing or overcoming resistance to the taking of the property or to the retention thereof immediately after the taking. Now, that's what happened in this case. She snatched the phone out of his hand and refused to give it back. Now, there are articles, there are news stories on TV and in the print media all the time about people using their cell phones on the street, and people, I've seen some where people ride by on a motor scooter and literally snatch the phone out of the person's hand and try to scoot off on the scooter. And if they don't get apprehended, the police are looking for a robbery suspect. You can't just take somebody's phone out of their hand or any other property, and the value doesn't matter. If I run up on you and I take a nickel from you by force, that's a felony robbery, and I could be looking at some prison time for that. Well, this should be no different because we're dealing with a white woman and Jonathan Majors. She took his property and refused to give it back. They kind of wrestled over the property, and he had to pry the property out of her hands in order to get his property back. Now, it's, I'm sorry to hear that she injured her finger, but she was out, went for drinks after all of this anyway. When she realized she couldn't catch him when he was running away down the street, I guess she went back to the cab service or the car or whatever and went wherever she went. They had video of her out having drinks after the robbery she committed. She committed a robbery. She took the property from Mr. Majors, and all he was trying to do was get his property back, which is what anyone who's the victim or of a robbery, or anyone who's in the process of maybe being victimized, they have the right to not allow someone to take their property. He had every right to try to get his property back. And she was holding on for dear life. And that's how her finger got injured. Her finger got injured because of her actions. She took the phone out of his hand. But they charged him with the crime. They want to ruin him. Disney, let him go, cut him loose and all that or whatever. They want to ruin him. Why? How dare he do something to our dear Becky? He didn't do shit. She committed the robbery. She should have been the one facing the charges, not him. But the system didn't care about the facts, y'all. The system saw the black man and the white woman, and the system flipped the script like that. I'm not mad at excuse me, the Manhattan District Attorney. What's his name? The Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg. He's just a puppet. I mean, he could have examined the facts and said, listen, this doesn't warrant any charges being filed against Mr. Majors. Perhaps this warrants a robbery charge against the woman who took his phone. But even if he didn't want to charge the woman, he certainly shouldn't have charged Jonathan Majors. But, you know, he has higher ups to answer to, and they just flipped the script. He went to trial. He was found guilty. I believe his case is being appealed right now. My question to the trial counsel, whoever was representing Mr. Majors during his trial, is how did y'all let that go down like that? Why didn't y'all point out that the lady took the phone, the lady committed the robbery when she snatched the phone out of his hand? All he was trying to do was recover his property. And she was holding on for dear life, and that's how her finger got injured. There was no intent on his part to injure her. She caused that by her own actions. And that should have been argued at the trial. It wasn't. And I don't know if it's being argued on appeal, but there's some ineffective assistance of counsel going around here. Jonathan Majors, Megan Good, or anybody who knows them, if you happen to be watching this video right now, y'all need to pull Jonathan Majors' coat and let him know. The argument was she committed the robbery when she snatched the phone out of his hand. That wasn't an innocent. You just can't do that. She committed a robbery. But he's the guy that got convicted. And to add insult to injury, I hear that she's trying to sue him in civil court for monetary damages. That's crazy. She's trying to sue him. Like, what was he supposed to do? Just let her keep the phone and the fuck out of here, man. It doesn't work like that, man. So if the system is willing to do that, is able to do that, and is ready to do that, why? Why did that happen? Because Mr. Majors was ignorant to the law. Sometimes you don't have to be ignorant. You can know exactly what's going on, and the system will still try to screw you over if you're black or brown. It's that simple, man. This is not a game. This is not a joke. It's very important. I've had my fair share of run-ins with the system. And it pretty much ended bad every time. Because that's how it's designed for you and I. We're not going to get a fair shake. So our best defense is to take offense and avoid getting caught up in the system. Don't be out here doing anything that's illegal, even though You could get picked up for doing absolutely nothing. You could be falsely accused, like the Central Park, like the exonerated five. They weren't doing anything but hanging out, trying to have a good time. I remember when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, summertime, I wanted to just hang out and have a good time. That's all they were doing. Somebody attacked a white woman and all hell broke loose. They rounded up 30, 40 people and got the 5 innocent young men and railroaded them and really did some serious damage to their lives. It's not a good thing to be going upstate in New York State or to prison anywhere and you're charged with a sex crime. In New York, we call them rapos. Oh, you're a rapo? You're looked down upon. You know what I'm saying? The prison population doesn't like rapos. And these guys went in for that, and they were innocent. You had some people calling for the death penalty. I'm not going to mention any names. Some people were calling for the death penalty. And these men were innocent. But the system didn't care. They wanted to hold somebody accountable. It's not about finding the right perpetrator and holding the right perpetrator accountable. It's about, let's get the first black or brown person we see, round them up, and make the evidence fit, and railroad them and send them on up top. So if you're ignorant and you don't know what's going on, the system is going to try to screw you. Remember at the beginning of the podcast, I was saying there's a process, it's a criminal process, a procedure. They have a criminal procedure law in New York State that dictates how the process is supposed to go from arrest until the case is resolved, whether it be acquittal if it goes to trial, conviction if it goes to trial, or a plea bargain or reduced charges, or however the case, the charges get disposed of. There's a procedure and a process that has to be followed. Well, guess what? If you don't know what's going on and you're black or brown, the system is going to screw you every step of the way. So please, if you're watching this video and you know you're out there doing something you shouldn't be doing, you should seriously reconsider changing course before you get caught up in the system. Because if you get caught up in the system, you're not going to get a fair one. In future episodes, I'm going to tell you some of my own personal experiences with the system and how I was screwed. Even when I knew what was going on. System doesn't care. If you're not directly breaking the law or doing something you know you shouldn't be doing, you might know someone who is. You need to, if you really love that person or care about that person or people, you need to have a real talk with them or direct them to this video, to this series of videos that's going to be coming up, and tell them they need to stop. Because if they get caught up in the system, they should expect to not receive a fair one. That's going to conclude this episode. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you liked what you saw. Thank you.